I do think we are at a point where people are tired of that. I really do believe that we are ushering in this new, like, this isn't working anymore.
Just keeping them as
Ke-
natural and free flowing as possible. So
So if the
thank you for
dog
being.
barks, we're okay.
Yeah, yeah. Dog. It's what they're supposed to do.
We
What kind
get
of dog you have?
we're regular Amazon deliveries. We have a
Yeah,
Havanese and a
nice.
golden doodle.
Awesome. Golden
Yeah,
doodles are very full of personality.
they are like animal live versions of teddy bears, if you ask me. Just
Yes. Yes.
cute, cute and
Yes.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a dog person. I have a Great Dane.
Okay.
His
Oh,
name is Louis. He's huge. Uh,
yes.
yes. A lot of
As they
fun.
tend to be,
Yeah.
those Great Danes.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely an experience. He tends to think that he is like this little tiny lapdog, where
Hmm.
he can just like be all up in your personal space all of the time. But I love her. Yes.
My sister-in-law is a dog shower, whatever the correct term is, and she
Right.
breeds Great Danes and
Wow.
sheepdog, and she shows them. So I've been around Great Danes for a good part of my life. So
That's awesome.
they're horses, really.
Yes,
And
like
they
a
are
small horse.
gentle, right? They're like
Yes.
gentle giants. So,
Yeah. You know what? I've one of the reasons I don't think I've ever actually shared this perspective before, but one of the reasons why I always wanted a Great Dane was I am 6'4", 280 pounds. I am by all accounts a large man. And oftentimes misunderstood for being this big scary dude.
right?
Where I see a lot of that in my dog. It's like, hey, this is just because he's large doesn't make him bad. Oftentimes misunderstood for just the size of who they are naturally.
Right.
And yeah,
Their
weird little
outward
perspective there.
appearance. Their
Yeah,
outward appearance is deceiving.
yeah. I
Big
think
big metaphor for life, actually.
yeah, I think a lot of people tend to judge the book by its cover and not think, hey, there might be something a little bit deeper there, or there might not be a really soft side to this huge animal.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a weird analogy for me to make about myself, but I often see a lot of relatability in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs are great.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. So definitely the first time I've ever started a show with a conversation on dogs. But thank you for being here. I'm super pumped to have this conversation, and I think we already started off on a pretty good note about just the human side of just life and being resilient and kind of having these conversations. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And I know for you, that's kind of a big part of what you do and talk about this, just relatability and how to be resilient and not have to try and be perfect at everything you do. So I'd love if we can just kind of expand on that and let's start with a little bit of a background for how you really got started down this journey. So if you could kind of take me back a little bit to
Yeah.
what started you on that.
Yeah. So everything in my life has been a stumbled onto the next thing. There are people that are born and they know what they want to do and they go after it. My life has been a series of forks in the road, and I've always taken the unexpected fork. Honestly, I in a million years never thought I would do what I am doing. I honestly don't think I could have looked back and assumed I would have achieved the success that I have achieved in my profession. But I've also, sacrificed a lot. Some of the things I'm not so proud that I've sacrificed. So I started off, out of college, getting a job, corporate girl. I enjoyed the security of the check every single, deposit. There it is,
Right.
there it is, until you actually have a thought outside of the corporate structure, or you start to look at things and ask questions, and then things just don't seem to authentically fit for you, or they don't make sense to you. And there have been so many parts in my life, Jim, where I thought, like, why can't I just be like average? Like, and I don't mean like I'm above average, but like complacent. Like there's a lot of complacency in the corporate world, and that's okay. You know, if you can stumble across something that is rewarding, fulfilling, has a great culture, you are super, super, super lucky. I enjoyed the work that I did. My husband and I started out, we were getting married, and we looked at our bank account, and there was not enough money for a deposit. We didn't have parents that were, funding our marriage or our deposits. And so we started something on the side and pretty soon figured out that we had some talents that people were willing to pay for, which opened the door to entrepreneurship for us. So I've kind of always gone back and forth between entrepreneurship and the corporate world. We had 4 children. My husband and I decided we wanted them to love learning. So we were hippies back in the day and we homeschooled. Like everybody was like, "You're homeschooling your children?" What in the world will they do for socialization? And I like, we're not keeping them in a closet. There's just like 4 hours every day that we will help them learn to love learning. We really wanted them to love learning. So my husband was a stay-at-home dad at a time that there were no stay-at-home dads. And we took that little side business and decided, maybe this should be something that we do full time. And so we've kind of gone back and forth. So we had these peaks of really great business time and great growth. And then, we were in training at the time. And when the economy starts to dip, the first thing people in the corporate world say is, let's do more with less people, but let's not train those people. So
Yeah.
we didn't have really an opportunity to have some safeguards back then. So I've worked my way up to a C-suite executive in a $500 million health and wellness brand. I enjoyed every aspect of it until I didn't. So it was kind of like what I've seen along the way, Jim, is a sincere desire for people to make a difference in their personal lives and in their business lives, but have very little wherewithal to navigate the personal, the spiritual, the psychological growth.
Right.
And so I've learned the hard way, and so now I'm just on this mission to help people figure things out sooner, faster, and live a more fulfilling day to day. So I'd gone to this conference and they were talking about how do you define success? And I had all these great things that define success in the future. In the future. And then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, so after I achieve X, Y, and Z, then I will be happy. Wow. Like truly, like a ton of bricks hit me that like that's why you made really poor decisions in the past in terms of the amount of time you spend working, the
Right.
amount of the belief that you had that the illusion of security. So like I'm at a place in my life where it's certainly not too late, but I recognize this pattern and I see it in other business people. I see it in other entrepreneurs. I see it in other drivers. And I want to be able to say, yeah, you can have the career, but resilience doesn't come from a hustle. It doesn't come from a grind. It comes from being strategic about your entire life. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I think it brings up a lot of very interesting talking points. To me, what I'm hearing you say is it really comes down a lot to sort of zooming in on just the present moment and saying, hey, what can I do now? Like
Yes.
not worrying about what is everyone going to say about me? What is the expectation of society? But like, what is the best possible choice I can do in this moment? And I think whether it's leaving a corporate job and starting your own thing, or whether it's homeschooling your kids, it's like, hey, what is the best possible thing that I can do in this moment to move me and my family forward?
Yes.
And then let's just go do that. And then let's reevaluate the next time. And then
Yes.
let's make just the next best decision and not worry about everything else. Do I hear that right?
Yes. And I think there has to be more intentionality around what you want your life to look like in the present moment. So there's so much conversation around be more, do more, have more. And it's this more, 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 which implies that somehow you can't be satisfied in the now. And I think that's a big trap, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that comes down to too, people don't necessarily know who they are to be able to really appreciate where they are. Right? A lot of
Yes.
times you see the people in this corporate culture, they like that corporate culture because it gives them some structure and some identity, right? And for them, it's just
The
easy.
identity.
I don't need to know who I am personally. I am just this humanoid droid that shows up to this location 5 days a week and spends 8 hours, and then I go home and I just wait for tomorrow. And I think that's
Yes.
a really it's a sad thing to see in people. And hey, it's fine if you again enjoy and you find purpose in that corporate world, but it should not be where you get your identity from. And I think that's a conversation people need to start having.
That is correct. And you have in most cases, you have very little control over the rules of that environment. And if that's how you're setting yourself up, that like my identity is solely focused on a game that in many ways I cannot win, you're either going to just keep job jumping, you're going to have maybe a marriage that isn't working, a family life that isn't working, and what you tell yourself, at least what I told myself was, well, I'm doing this for my family.
Right.
But in between, I'm hearing from my kids when I'm like on my phone the entire time, or it's the end of the month and I'm like, it's the end of the month, it's a close month, and because I was in charge of sales, so the end of the month, big time, you can never, doesn't matter. Family weddings, New Year's Eve, Halloween, doesn't matter. Got to close the month. Got to, and it's kind of like, gosh, really, my identity needs to be set up outside of work. And I bring that identity to my work instead
Mm.
of reacting to what is going on around me.
Yeah. Well, it's a great point you make. And I think, especially in today's world, where so many people are so caught up in everything else going on around them, they
Yes.
feel like, again, to what you started saying before about playing a game where you can't control the rules, right? And that's what we're doing, whether it's the corporate world or the social world, whatever you want to look at. We don't get to pick the rules. We just
Right.
get to figure out how we individually are going to navigate them and what we are going to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people don't realize you have control to move throughout the game board as you wish. And just
That's
because these are the
correct.
rules doesn't mean you can't find a way to navigate between them to your personal advantage. Right?
Yeah. Yes. And I would say do some research yourself. Really ask 5 of your friends, do you consider yourself successful? And what is the criteria for success? And I think what you'll find is, and I think it's so a little bit social media. It's a little bit of, the hustle, the grind, the title, the corporate, like there's no award at work for actually being a good citizen at work. There's no, it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to give you a 20% raise because you're really good at relationships and we appreciate that. Like there's really no framework for someone to decide that those attributes are really worth cultivating. So if you're not intentional about this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is how I win. Like, so one of my markers for happiness is how many people did I truly connect with and add value to their life every single day.
Mm.
Now, that is a huge shift from you got to hit these numbers every day. You got to get these people to do this every day. It really changed the game for me when I actively sat down and trained my brain. And you do have to kind of rewire your brain. You got to detox a little. You got to rewire your brain and think through today's measurements for success are going to be how many relationships did I further along? Did I deepen? How many people did I connect with? And how many people did I talk to today where I added value to their life. Now,
Right.
that's part of my process for business as well, but I fundamentally can win every day when I control the rules, when I control the narrative.
Yeah. I think most people don't realize how much control they have of the pen in that story to really write that narrative and not just show up and go along for
Yes.
whichever way the wind blows.
Yes. And I think the world is changing. I do think that people, one of the things that attracted me to your podcast is your story and this sense of, I think there's an awakening in people that there's got to be more to life than money, work, title. Like those things are certainly desirable, but there has to be. And I think people are looking for, like we keep hearing like authenticity, authenticity. But I think we also are moving toward more connection and community. And those things exist on a completely different plane than the business strategies of, corporate or entrepreneurship.
100%. I think it's also a little difficult to translate. And I think about this a lot because this podcast is really a journey for me of discovery, of figuring out who I am and continuing to really sharpen the sword. I think about all the time, what is the desired outcome? Can I save somebody from going through the experience that I went through?
Yes.
And I don't think that I can, right? So I think about it a lot. I don't think that I am able to prevent someone from having a no half cakes moment. Someone's going to have to get to the realization that the life that they're living right now is not the life that they want to continue pursuing. They want to find, hey, is there a better, happier, more joyful version of me? I'm not going to prevent you from getting to that tipping point. But what I can do, and I think what you can do in having these conversations, is give somebody awareness that there is a better version. There is another way to tell that story, and quickly find community and resources to be able to jump in with both feet and say, all right, cool, now what do I do? Right? Do you think the same way where people still need to make the individual decision that, hey, this journey I'm on right now is not, just because I started the story this way doesn't mean I need to end it this way, but they need to be the one that decides that.
Yes. And really, honestly, what you're talking about, and I'll reframe it from a sales standpoint, is really like the hero's journey.
Yeah.
It is, I'm at a point where things aren't working out for me anymore. And at some point, I make the decision that I need to change. And the guide, the half cakes, podcast comes along, and now all of a sudden there's an awakening. I do think, to be honest, that you are maybe underplaying the role that you do have, because so many people never hear, like you're planting seeds. I believe this podcast plants seeds. So in sales, the idea is to enter into people's hearts and brains at the point that they are having conversations about need for change.
Right.
Prior to need for change, you need awareness that there's actually another way to exist. I will tell you, I was the queen of, I heard it all. I did. I heard it all. And I do believe that all of those conversations mattered to me before I finally was like, this is what they're talking about, right? So I agree. You can't do it for them, but I do think you play a large role. Conversations like this play a large role in opening people's eyes and hearts to a different way of existing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's really where you put the focus on the definition of success in that journey.
Yes.
Right? And I think that there's a large stumbling block for people in their personal relationships who try and love somebody through change.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people in this world who have someone close to them, whether it's a parent, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, where they can see from the outside looking in a spot where they're going to stumble, where they're going to fall, and they want to try and force them through this change point.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't force somebody through that. What we can do is give them the space and grace to really figure that out for themselves, and we can come alongside them and help them. And I think that's a really important lesson that I've learned along the way. You can't force somebody to change,
Oh,
right? You've got to just go alongside them and give them room, give
that's
them
right.
space, right? Do you see the same
Yes.
way?
Yeah. You've got to not only make the space, I believe you have to provide a soft landing when they fall, because you watch and you watch and you're like, oh, there it is. And so many of us have a tendency to be like, I know, I told you, I've been trying to tell you this for a very, very, very long time. You've got to create that soft space, to be that soft landing, to be like, I feel you. Like I
Right.
do. I understand. I've been there, and here's a potential path out for you.
Mm. Let me go on that for a second, because I think that you just said something really important. I've been there. And I want to highlight that, because that means you've got to go first, and you've got to be willing to fail in that area first
Yep.
to find the way forward. Now you can come back and help the other people. And if you have not failed first, you have not gone through this process of being willing to show up and refine yourself, you can't be there for somebody else, right? So
That's
I
right.
think that there's this focus on personal responsibility to keep sharpening your sword and keep finding the next best version of you, so that you can be there for the people around you, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, and what I hear you saying, which I absolutely love, is that part of how you find happiness every day is making yourself better,
Yeah.
even a little bit every day. And that creates momentum. And as you said, it's not about perfection, it's about movement in a different direction.
Yes.
And yeah, I could agree.
Yeah. And I think that oftentimes people put too much pressure on themselves to get to a
Yes.
milestone, right? What success is going to look like at a certain point. And I know I've been guilty of it. I said, hey, when I get X, Y, and Z, I'm going to
Right.
be happy, right? And then you get there and you're like, well, this is not really what I thought it was going to be. It's just stuff. And then
Yes.
it falls apart. And I think
Yes.
that that's such an important part that people need to go through. But I still think you need to go through that process of
Yes.
wanting that thing and then realizing it, to have that hero's journey moment where you realize, all right, cool, now we're going to write the rest of the story.
Yeah. I had to go through it several times. So, some of us are a little more thick-headed than others, where it wasn't just, wow, it wasn't what I thought it was. It was, one, I never even celebrated the arrival. So I never celebrated that I had made those leaps into something better. And I always had another target. So there was never an acceptance that I was doing better, that I was improving, and that didn't, if you don't do that, you don't build your confidence, and your confidence is what fuels the action.
Right.
And so, yeah, 100%. It's work. It's an intentional, I would say it's a lifestyle, to be honest. Hustling is a lifestyle, corporate achievement can be a lifestyle, but being the best version of yourself is, in my opinion, ultimately the best lifestyle that encompasses all those things and more for people.
I think a big part of that comes down to gratitude, right? Do you have some gratitude practice where you're grateful for, the day that you had or the day that's in front of you, to be proactively grateful? Like, what is your relationship with gratitude?
Fridays are gratitude Fridays for me. So, from a business perspective, every Friday, and this is part of what I coach people, I remind them, like, it's Friday. It's Gratitude Friday. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It really is. It is the precursor to the life you want, is looking for the things that are already happening, that are signaling success to you, so that you continue to get and receive and notice more of that. There's gratitude in every interaction, every moment. I was doing some work on a journal, and part of the journal every day is, let's let's actively write down the things that we're grateful for. And from a psychology standpoint, what that does is it helps the brain focus in on those things more and more and more and more, which builds that satisfaction, which to me is part of resilience. Like if you don't feel satisfied, if you don't feel a sense of accomplishment, if you don't feel a sense of gratitude about what you're doing, why would you continue doing anything?
Right. I
So
think
it is important.
even more than that too, the analogy that I see when you say that is sort of like putting battery percentage in your battery for the day. So you're going to go through the day and life is going to happen to you. But if you start your day with putting gratitude in there for the things you're grateful for, whether it's
Yes.
the end of your week or the start of your morning, whatever it is, I think that gratitude practice puts capacity in your life where now when you run through the situation where whatever the stressful thing is, because we're going to run into stressful situations, instead of taking 20% from zero, leaving you negative and pissed off and angry at the world, you take 20% from 100. Cool, you're still 80% good. You're going to be grateful for the opportunity and fill yourself back up. Right? And I think that that's a really important
Yes.
part that people maybe skip out on because they don't necessarily see it. Right? They think, hey, I'm here. We'll make the best of the situation, whatever it is. But they don't proactively charge their battery. Look, you do it when your phone is at 10%, it's an emergency. You're running around trying to find a charger like it's the end of the world. We don't, for some reason, do the same thing with ourselves. When we're feeling 10% full of joy, we're just like, whatever it is, I'll put some Netflix on and I'll just survive till tomorrow and I'll just hopefully have a better day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Feel gratitude and chill should be the new.
I love it. Let's
should,
start it right now.
let's make the bumper sticker. But you're absolutely right. And I honestly I do believe it is just because we're not exposed to that as I mean, you were raised by some really enlightened parents, or you work somewhere where people were very in tune to that, but I think for the most part it's a buzzword, but it really is a practice.
Yeah.
When I work with people, very often, I'll have people come to me and they'll be like, I just feel like quitting, whatever it is that they're working. I feel like quitting. And the first step is well, tell me what you love about it. Tell me what you're thankful for about it. And then we get them back in a better heart space and a better head space. And now they can make better decisions. I mean, sometimes the right answer is pivot, but most of the times it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, I'm drained because I haven't taken the time to focus on the things that bring me joy, that I am grateful for, the evidence that I am successful and that I am experiencing the really best parts of life right now today.
Yeah. How much of that do you think is surrounding yourself with like-minded people? Like people
Uh,
who appreciate and have gratitude and that sort of thing, whereas now you've got this kind of tribe around you to help keep the conversation moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that is the strategy. I think that is predominantly important. Does your community align with that? And I think we had a little too much of that culturally that doesn't
Yeah.
align. And so you hear all this noise all the time, and the default position is, attack, dissatisfaction, annoyance, upset. And I kind of like, maybe we could all be a little more aligned from the standpoint of, well, what are we grateful for about that
Mm.
situation? There's always something in that situation to be grateful for, because you can do one of two things. You can spiral and circle the drain of despair, which is kind of a default position culturally for a lot of people, or you can look at things, change your perspective, and react differently and have a better existence. To me, gratitude is about choosing a better existence regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. What you just said reminded me of something I was thinking about the other day. is, I think a lot of what we suffer from right now as a society is this belief that we either need to be pro or
Mm-hmm.
anti.
Mm-hmm.
There is no in the middle, neutral. I'm
Not
not letting
anymore.
it enter my space. Moving on.
That's right.
Right? How many people are, I'm really pro this, and if I'm not pro that, then I have to be anti the other thing.
Yeah.
There's almost no space for you to be like, I don't care at all. I'm going to keep scrolling and forget it even happened. Right? Do
Yes.
you think that there's that part too?
Absolutely. And I think that the next evolution for us is middle ground. Like,
Mm,
is middle ground is what's the good in this? What's the commonality? How do we rise above and get to a space where, because I'll tell you right now, there's so much conflict in people's day to day. I mean, all you have to do is spend 10 seconds on any social media platform, and you could easily, regardless of your beliefs, be circling the drain because
right.
the world is coming to an end from your, you know, if you believe everything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, no, actually there's still a lot of beauty out there. There's beauty in people's beliefs. There's there's beauty in coming together and coming up with solutions. And so I do think we are at a point where people are tired of that. I really do believe that we are ushering in this new, like, this isn't working anymore. We have to not be pro and anti, but maybe strive for understanding and solutions. I think are better for everyone when we have more understanding.
Yeah.
And I think the basis of that is, gratitude, honestly.
100%. And I think there's another part too, is like you said, thinking about the reality of whether or not you need to respond, or
Yeah.
just looking at the context of things, because it's, again, very easy to pick up your phone and within 10 seconds you're in the middle of something that causes you to be really upset, or really, the total opposite. Cool experiment. Put down your phone
Hello.
and just walk outside and realize,
Yes.
like, birds are chirping, the sun is shining. It's like all the things that you think are just your reality are really
Mm-hmm.
inside this little 6-inch box that you keep in your pocket. You could just look the other way and realize how much beauty and joy is going on around you that you're just not paying attention to because you're so focused on this one thing that
Yeah.
just makes you angry.
And you're missing, again, I just really believe passionately that people are missing so much of the gift of life
Yeah.
by doing that. And then to find out that, oh my gosh, those are robots. You know what I mean? Like, to find out, like, you are arguing with a bot,
Yeah.
like that, like, come on. Like, and I get caught up in it. Like, I find myself sometimes getting ready to post something and I'm like, why do I need to be the 700th comment? Like,
Right.
literally, this conversation has been beaten to death. No one is going to read comment 701. And I have really gotten to a place where I've learned to I'm not great at it still, but trying to get to a space where I'm like, I'm going to put that down. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to spend 5 minutes being grateful for the things and it's the same thing you're talking about. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. The sky is freaking beautifully blue 99% of the time. Things are blooming here all year long. There's birds singing in trees. I get to be with my family. Like, if you don't take the time to experience those things,
Right.
you really are missing out. Really. And I'm just at a place where I'm like, hey, hello, everybody. You're missing out. You are
Yeah.
so missing out. Let's get back to enjoying the things. You
Right.
can still pursue your goals and what have you, but not to the detriment of today's existence and enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of that too comes from, this thing I talk about all the time, this innate need that we all have to feel loved, appreciated, seen, and heard. Like, if you look at the mentality behind why do you want to be the 700th comment, it's because you feel like you have a viewpoint that you want
Yep.
someone to be like, yeah, she was right. and that makes you feel appreciated. It makes you feel seen and heard. But when you get that love, appreciation, feeling seen and heard from pursuing your passion in life, from the relationships you have, from the time you spend outside, from your gratitude practice, you don't care about that. Like,
That's
yeah, again,
correct.
we're human. We're going to have this innate need to want to just contribute our opinion. But the feedback loop gets really small where we're like, scroll, I'm going outside.
Yes. 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 And
Right. And
in
that comes, I think, a lot from what we talked about before, that identity, that authenticity, that who we are naturally, where we're not worried about other people's criticism and opinion. But how do we start breaking that habit if we've spent so much time in that mental space? Where do we start?
well, I think you have to detach yourself from a few unhelpful thoughts. And one of them is I need to be right.
Hmm.
So if you can detach yourself from the need to be right, and I've lived in that space. You know, the spaces that I've lived in are I need to be right. I need to be great at what I do. I need to achieve results. And, you know, I had a real awakening when I'm like, you know what, I really, and I actually had to get a coach, you know, who reminds me like, okay, but today, how many relationships did you move along? You know, did you
Right.
spend time with your kids and your family? Or did they come over and you were on your phone, or you were in a webinar, or, you know, you spent 2 hours scrolling the internet while your husband is sitting, you know, in the same room with you? So I think it starts with I've got to first decide what my identity is. So I want to be a loving, joyful person who adds value to the relationships and the community in my life. And then you have to start looking at your practices, your habits. And I think it really is something you have to kind of write down, Jim. I think you have to write down your, like, look at your day and look at where you spend your time and ask yourself, am I spending time with the things I value? And, you know, I don't value strangers' opinions on the internet. I don't. And you have to unaddict yourself, because I do think there are little dopamine hits that, I mean, I think we all know that happen, and you have to unaddict yourself. And part of it is don't new habits. So I get up in the morning and I reach for my phone and maybe I start a podcast instead of scrolling the right. So you're attaching a habit to a new habit. You know, maybe I am going to go through and I'm going to curate my feed better. So even if I get in there, I'm not seeing all the same ridiculousness, but it takes work. It's just kind of like losing weight. You got to create new habits. You got to go to the gym. You got to eat better food. You got to move more.
Hmm. I love that you say that, because I think that there's this expectation where you have to do it cold turkey overnight,
It
where you
doesn't
have to
happen
just
that way.
instantly change, all these habits. And you're right. It's these little micro adjustments, whether you repeat that same micro adjustment for 2 weeks or a month, and that's the only one you focus on. Next thing you know, it's 6 years later and you're living a totally different life, because you
That's
very
right.
intentionally, very slowly improved your life one little habit at a time.
Just take the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. It's definitely something I've noticed even for myself. Like, and it might sound crazy. I I don't know if you have an iPhone or an Android. When you have good choice.
iPhone.
Uh, where you can put your apps into folders, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
one of the
Oh.
things, this was a trick that I learned a long time ago.
Oh.
Rather than naming the folder shopping, mine says I am blessed. Right? There's
Mm.
these really little symbols, right, where you look at your phone how many times a day. And
That's
rather than
right.
seeing these default crap names for productivity or whatever, mine says I am home, I am creative, I am blessed, I am
Mm.
full, I am traveling. Like, you create this perspective in your head and you keep reinforcing these little positive thoughts over and over again.
Great. So you're like putting your affirmations on your folder names.
100%. And it's super
Yeah.
simple and super silly, but it's been that way in my phone for like the past 5 years. And every day I see them and they remind me, instead of saying, let me open up shopping and let me go to Amazon, I remind myself how blessed I am to be able to pick up a phone, punch some things in, and then magically a thing shows up on my doorstep a few hours later. Like,
Yeah.
we need those little reminders of just how blessed we are to be grateful and appreciative and not just stuck in the moment of, going through life. I think those little micro adjustments are super helpful.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that
Yeah.
today. I'm doing that today. That reminds me of something that I learned from the creation of affirmations is using the words in even more, even more, which
Mm,
which changed my affirmations because instead of, I am a loving person, right? It becomes, I am even more loving every single day, The even more is for me a sense of expansion. And I don't know that you can fit all that on the folder name, but it did
yeah.
come up like as people are listening, you're like, I love the idea of affirmations and the idea that you already have some of that, but you are going to experience even more every single day. And again, it's that 1%. It's just that
Yeah.
little shift every single day. And, if I could experience even more every day for 30 days, that's incredible.
Yeah. 'Cause it's this idea that you're not starting from zero. Even if you're starting
Yes.
from 0.001%, you've got something to start from. I love that. I will steal that in return. Thank you.
It's not mine, but I'll pass it along.
I
I
love it.
I
I
will
mean,
pass it along.
yeah, I think it's a great
Yeah.
idea. And similarly, I use the word yet a lot as well,
Mm.
right? Because
Yes.
a lot of times we make these statements that says, I am not whatever. I'm not
Mhm.
happy yet.
Mhm.
But adding
Mhm.
the word yet gives
Mhm.
you so much more possibility, and it doesn't just give you this hard stop where it's never going to happen. You
Yeah.
include the option to grow. And I think, man, if you start putting even more, which gives you a firm foundation to start from, and then yet,
Yes.
which leaves it open ended,
Yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go. We are building affirmations.
Yeah. And it is interesting. So many people are missing out. Like I really do feel that, and that's a sense of what I see when I'm some on social. A lot of times, I'm like, oh, you're stuck in this state of angst or anger, or even outside of some of the things. Even in business, sometimes it's like this grandiose, you know, um, borderline, shall we say, lying of your success. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're at like a 20, you need to be at like a 4. You need to be at a 4. How many people, and honestly, it's funny, somebody asked me recently like about my COVID experience, and I was like, what COVID taught me was I better get my poop in a group because things change overnight. And that was really the start of my awakening, was like, okay, so if this all falls apart, whatever this is, right? Because I never in a million years imagined we
Right.
would go where we did in a short amount of time. And it just really struck me that, like, okay, so what do I get to keep for me? So if things aren't permanent, if the business isn't permanent, if the job isn't permanent, if the finances aren't permanent, what part of my life is permanent? And those are all things that we're talking about. Those are, like, I can experience no one can take a sense of gratitude from you. No one can take a desire to connect with other people or finding joy in that connection from you. You have to amass a tool kit of things that are truly yours, that in any situation, you're like, the world around me may be doing X, but my identity is based on these principles, these values, and these are my toolkits, my
Right.
tools. Gratitude being of it. Gratitude and intention, and a love for people to me is, those are key.
Yeah, I strongly agree, and I think it's really important for people to pay attention to that and intentionally build those things up in times like these. Because
Yes.
I think a lot of people look at, man, I'm so busy doing X, Y, and Z. I've got all these things going on where I'm too busy to do that. I'm too busy to think about that, or I'm too busy to grow 1% today. I've got all this other stuff going on. And next thing you know, you get into a situation where you need that
Yeah,
and you didn't put in the work.
that's
And I
right.
think it's really important. I love the way you said it, for people to really build those things now, so when they need them, they're available.
Yeah.
Mm,
And the benefit to you and your family is immeasurable.
yeah. So let me ask you this, because you talked a little bit about when you're on social and you see someone who you almost really just want to grab by the shoulders and shake and say, "Hey, what the heck is wrong with you?" I have those urges sometimes. Where we talked about, we can't necessarily do that. We have to just give them the space and grace to go on their own journey. We can just be alongside them for that process. How much of that do you think is the responsibility of ourselves to show people the standard that we hold ourselves to, so they have a standard to follow if they want? They have an example of followable excellence.
Mm-hmm.
I look at, sometimes when I'm living my life and doing my thing, these sort of things don't necessarily get the celebration that they quote unquote deserve, in my opinion. If you
Mm-hmm.
were to go on social media and put out some type of inflammatory comment, you'd get a lot of engagement, the likes, the thumbs up, the comments, whatever. And I think we put a lot of emphasis on that,
Yep.
where, hey, me just living my life and holding myself to a standard of integrity and honor may not be celebrated publicly, but I know that
That's
in
right.
our own house, our kids have an example to follow. And I think that, when we look at the relationship we have with other people, I think it's really important for us to just focus on ourselves and be the example, not necessarily force them to follow it, but just be the example,
Yeah.
right? Not to strive not to be well known, but to strive to be worth knowing, is how I would
That's,
put it.
oh, very nice. Yes. And people feel that. So what you're talking about is a different sort of validation. I if you stop and take a minute, you will notice that you feel different around certain people.
Mm,
And you will either be attracted to that vibe, or that vibe is not going to be part of who you are, but you will feel that person's intention, energy, love. And in my book, you are adding value to the world just simply by kind of, being a lighthouse that puts light into the world
mm,
when other people are spending a lot of time snuffing out light. And I think there's value there, but like you said, that's an internal thing. You have to value that for what you know is the true value of doing it. Like I'm always, I can always tell, you know, I very often when I get on podcasts, I'm like, ooh, that's a nice person. That's a cool person. That person has a cool vibe. Like you can feel that.
right.
You can also sense the opposite in folks. And so I think the key for people is, again, it comes back to, what do you want your identity to be? If you're in a meeting, if you're on social media, if you're in line at the coffee shop or the grocery store, do you want to be someone that extinguishes flames or someone that pours gasoline on the flames?
Right.
And I think what you're talking about is, let's extinguish, even though the people around us might not value it. You did the right thing. And there will be people around who are thankful that because over time, if more people are doing that, like, you got to start somewhere. It starts with every single person deciding,
Right.
this is what we're going to do. And not because it's the right thing for me, but it's just the right thing in general.
Yeah. I love that because I think it really reinforces the responsibility of yourself to start that process, right? Because
Yeah.
when two people meet, if you come out the gate with this negative attitude, no matter how nice a person the other person is, they're going to recognize that and be shut down immediately.
Yeah.
Right. And the expression that I use all the time is there are too many people who spend their whole life staring into the mirror, waiting for their reflection to smile first. And I think that's
Mm.
such a beautiful point for people to realize is like you bear a responsibility to be the energy you want to receive. And
That's
if you
correct.
show up in the world a grateful, happy, joyous person, you're going to get so much freaking more of that back. You're not even going to know what to do with it, but you got
Yeah.
to go first.
Agree.
Mm,
Agree. We talk about this in business sometimes with salespeople who are like, I just don't want to call people. And I'm like, why? Why? Like, if you're calling people to get something, I understand that you don't want to call people. But what if you reframed that call as an opportunity to connect with someone on a different level, or to improve their day? Like, it isn't
right.
really about like I'm calling to get something. And I think it just comes down to, again, do you want to live your life contributing, or do you want to live your life reacting? And contributing is a far greater purpose, which in turn creates contribution and value back to you and the community as a whole.
Yes. And I think it's also way easier to do because you don't have to really try as hard, right?
So
It's
much
very
more fun.
freeing feeling.
So much more rewarding. Like at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you call 10 people, you interact on social with 10 people, you go to a meeting with 10 people, and your intention was, you know what, connection, gratitude, holding space, and not
Right.
trying to change people, but being an example of an alternate version of who they are. That's helpful. It gets noticed. I can tell you in all of my rage and crazy parts of my life, I could always tell you who the people were in my life that brought peace in situations where I wasn't capable of doing that myself. And even still to this day, I can tell you back to elementary school, like these were the people that were the peacemakers, the lovers, the energy providers,
Mm,
and you still remember them.
mm. I love that. I think the beautiful part about that too is that it doesn't take anything away from you for not being able to be the peace provider in that moment,
Yep.
but it allows a relationship to form where, hey, there's going to be a point in time where I'm not able to do this for myself. And there's also going to be a time where you're the one who can do it for somebody else. But I
Yes.
think we don't need the ego and pride of having to be this perfect person all the time. When we surrender that a little bit and just show up as our authentic selves and be like, hey, right now in this relationship, we're 50-50 or we're 70-30 or whatever it is. But eventually, if you zoom out far enough, it'll average out. And I
Yeah.
think we look so much at this micro interaction where I'm getting from you or you're getting from me, and it's like taking away from me. It's crazy. I love how
Yeah.
you say, you look back to elementary school to have those memories of people who poured into your life. And I'm imagining in elementary school, the set of challenges you face is probably different than the set of challenges you face today. But
Yep.
in the scale of things, it was important.
Yeah.
And no matter how simple the thing that they did to show up and sit next to you on the bus or whatever the thing was, it impacted your life in a positive way just by showing up. And
Yeah.
that's just a beautiful perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And I could take it even as recent as work, having bad days, going into a particular boss's office and seeing a big smile on her face and acceptance and warmth, and knowing that maybe there was a screw up, but like there wasn't that punishment sense. There wasn't that inferior, you know, naughty you kind of. It was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for that. Like I really do think, even if people don't say it, I do think in their souls they're grateful for that, because as my husband would say, they're suffering and you're there to help end their suffering, even in small ways.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think it's unknown ways. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people we come across day to day, whether it's whoever, the person at the drive-through window, where we may have a 30-second interaction, but because we were able to show up joyous and full of gratitude, we gave them a little ray of hope, right? And just that one little candle on their birthday cake, which made all the difference. And I think
Yeah.
that that's such a beautiful little opportunity that we get, that if you are paying attention and you slow yourself down enough to really recognize in those moments, you see miracles every day. And how
Every day.
freaking cool is that? But
I
we got to
know.
pay attention to them.
Yeah. And they're out there. You're right. Every single
Yeah.
day.
And I think just to tie this all together, when you focus on those things, it really puts the rest of the junk in perspective with how small and insignificant it is. And it just gives you this ability to just move through it unaffected, unbothered by the
Yes.
chaos, because you've got your eyes focused on all this other beautiful stuff around you. The rest of the stuff is just noise. And you can just
Yes.
be in such a better reality, but you got to be the one to take control of that and decide what you focus on.
That's it. You've summed it up
Yeah.
perfectly. You've
Thank you.
summed
Well,
it up
I appreciate
perfectly.
you being here, because I could not have done it without you.
It
And
was my
huge
pleasure.
honor to you for doing what you do on the daily, because for real, it does make a tremendous difference in a
Yeah.
lot of lives. And I know for me personally, I am grateful for you for being here, for sharing this time with me. I've learned a lot and I appreciate it. And I want to make
Same.
sure that you know how much I appreciate you. And there are a lot of people who may never tell you, but you've made a difference in their lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the
Yeah,
same. Keep up the good work, man.
thank you. I appreciate it.